This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwallpod podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 536 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about a smash and grab victory in Stuttgart and we'll preview Saturday's game against Bayer Leverkusen. For that and more, I am joined by Lars Perlmann. Hello Lars, how are you doing?
Hello Stefan, I didn't get a good night of sleep, which is why I'm even more grumpy than usual, but otherwise I'm fine. How are you?
Yeah, I also did not have a good night of sleep as I had a dentist appointment very early this morning. So I think it's just going to be two grumpy old men doing this podcast now. So on Saturday, I was playing football by not by myself, but myself. So I did not see the second half of the Dortmund-Stuttgart game. So I think there are a couple of blanks you have to fill in. Now, I've seen the first half and it was extremely boring that I caught myself scrolling on the phone more than actually watching the game. And then, I had to go play soccer and came back and I saw IKEA folding chairs being tossed through the shot. Lars, what the heck happened there? And just can you before we talk about this boring ass game itself, maybe we just talk about the ending and why Stuttgart fans are a bunch of wuzzes.
I'm not entirely sure what they took offense with, because Dortmund's celebration, while in front of the home end, which is a little bit frowned upon, but it's in Stuttgart there's a bit of distance, so it's not like they were in beer throwing distance, and not in chair throwing distance either, as the pictures show. The celebrations were not overly exuberant or anything. I don't think many of the Dortmund players sort of engaged with the Stuttgart fans, so I don't really understand why they took offense so much. I think Adeyemi put his finger to his mouth in response basically to what Dennis Undav did in Dortmund in the first half of the season. I think Julian Riasson also kind of made a gesture towards the Stuttgart fans, but I think it was all very much box standard stuff when you win an away game late through two somewhat lucky, as you called them, smash and grab goals. So the posturing by the Stuttgart fans kind of fell flat a little bit, because they entered the outer ring, I guess, of the inner part of the stadium, if that makes sense. But then they stopped in front of a hurdle, which, basically every one of them could have jumped without any real physical effort. So I think a few of the Stuttgart players after the game said that the fans were actually more angry towards them because they felt like they weren't, defending their colors or whatever. All of this ultra machismo, it's part of the color of the Bundesliga, obviously, but having never been part of that stuff myself, I kind of struggle sometimes to see the real point, because, as I said, there was...
Well, it does look pathetic, honestly.
Yeah.
You just look like an idiot.
and I just don't understand, because as I said, the celebrations were not anything out of the ordinary. So I personally am not a person who would have thrown a chair in that situation. I don't know if that makes me a wuss now, or if it makes them, overreactive or whatever, but here we are.
The chairs weren't even thrown from the Cannstatter Kurve. I was from the side of the field as far as I know. So, who knows what was going on. It wasn't just one chair, right? It was like three in the end. But yeah, I think the reaction was a little bit over the top by Stuttgart fans. Adeyemi did explain it after the game, saying that he did not forget all the shenanigans that Stuttgart pulled in those 4 years. And obviously, there's a bit of a rivalry between those clubs. And honestly, I enjoy these kind of things. In the Bundesliga nowadays, where there are so many plastic clubs and also a lot of clubs that don't have a rich Bundesliga history, I do enjoy the rivalries. And it's always been feisty between Dortmund and Stuttgart, honestly, and I think that's just how it's supposed to be. So a little bit of hate flowing through the ranks, I think, is only conducive to the product, if you ask me. And also, while Dortmund fans have been bemoaning the game and performance by the Black and Yellows, I personally enjoy all the Schadenfreude I can have after the fact. So to me, that was a wonderful game, mostly because most of it I did not have to watch it. But Lars, I have been listening to other Dortmund podcasts in the last couple of days as while showering or doing chores and whatnot. And mostly what I found interesting was the analysis of this game in a relatively positive light. I think Dortmund did get a lot of praise for their very defensive approach. Now, one of my colleagues who is a Stuttgart fan asked me if I'm not a little bit embarrassed by this style of play. I personally think both can be true at the same time. On the one hand, obviously, in the long term, I would prefer if Dortmund just go in there and dominate and play positive football. On the other hand, in the context of this Borussia Dortmund team and how Dortmund haven't won, I think, in 7 games against Stuttgart, I think this is a very legitimate approach. Christian Streich, I think maybe he won once against Dortmund, but usually he always had the same approach and he always got mugged. So I understand that if you have such a losing streak or winless streak going, that it is more than legitimate to just try to put the game on ice and try to win ugly or play for a scoreless draw. I'm more than okay with that approach in this particular context. I think the greater point you want to make maybe is that of course, as a Dortmund fan, and, given the resource discrepancy, you would expect Dortmund to be a little bit more positive and register more than 5 shots throughout a game like this. And I think Adeyemi's chance was probably the first shot on target or something like that. It was the first real chance. All valid points. I think we all know them, but that's sort of my take on that game. How do you see it, Lars? Are you overly critical, or are you more also in the camp of saying, hey, Dortmund did a good job shutting down one of the best attacking teams in the Bundesliga, especially in Stuttgart?
I mean, first of all, I'm sorry, but I can't listen to this argument about resources anymore. Like, as I said in one of our previous episodes, Dortmund are closer to Heidenheim than Bayern, and the difference between Dortmund and Stuttgart is not that massive that it doesn't make, a difference for Stuttgart to play at home, for example, for Stuttgart to have more to play for this season in the run-in, because obviously they're still fighting for that position for Champions League football as opposed to Dortmund. So I just don't want to hear that anymore. And to the point of your colleague, embarrassment for victory, I'm never embarrassed about victories. And Dortmund have scored 60 goals this season, which is second only to Bayern. And obviously Bayern are in a league of their own, have now scored 100 league goals, I'm pretty sure, or maybe they are one shy. But in, the second half of the season, which is 11 games running, so a reasonable sample size, Dortmund have only scored 6 fewer goals than Bayern. So, this faux argument that Dortmund have been terrible offensively the entire season and are always only scraping by being lucky and whatever, it's just a bit tiresome to me. And, when you go to the third place team and completely shut them down, give them no real scoring opportunities, like, that's a pretty handy thing to be able to do in an away game. And then, with the quality that Dortmund have and can bring on the pitch from the bench, as in this case with all the players involved in the goals, so Brandt, Adeyemi, and Fabio Silva all came off the bench. It's only natural that you will have probably one or two chances to, if you want, steal the game at the end. And that is what Dortmund did and what Stuttgart didn't do. So I'm not surprised that there was quite a bit of praise for Dortmund's performance, in all aspects, obviously, not just in terms of what they did with the ball, which obviously was very little. But for example, both Dennis Undav and Sebastian Hoeneß were quite positive about Dortmund because they understand it's pretty hard to play against Dortmund these days. And it's probably the first time in years that we've been able to say this consistently about a Dortmund side in the Bundesliga. And I'm just getting a bit annoyed by people trying to diminish what they are doing, because once again, I want to remind people that I think it's March 15th, 2025, Dortmund have lost exactly 2 Bundesliga games, and those 2 came against FC Bayern, and in both games, Dortmund had chances not to lose the game. So I don't understand why we always have to diminish that and nitpick, and I think there was quite a few people online, at least, obviously it's my fault to look at it and take them somewhat seriously, but where I would say they would be more happy if Dortmund lose out the rest of the season, if it means they get a new coach and play more progressive football, whatever that means, next season, as opposed to just finishing this pretty special campaign they are putting together, which we would all be looking at in a completely different light if Bayern Munich weren't light years ahead in pretty much every category these days, because what Dortmund are doing this season is not normal and would, in most healthy leagues, be rewarded with the championship.
Yeah, one category that Bayern are not ahead is the Rückrundentabelle, because right now Dortmund are with 28 points versus Bayern's 26 actually in first place in the second half of the season. So there's at least that, which is also, I think, a little bit of an achievement right now after 11 match days. So there's that. And personally, I think we have been asking for Dortmund to not be idiots so many times. We have been clamoring for Dortmund to have the ability to just defend games, especially there will always be a game where you don't have it for whatever reason, and if you then can still pull a result out of this kind of game, it is an achievement. And I think that Dortmund have shown this season, especially the second half against Hamburg, or I thought the Augsburg game was a pretty good example where Dortmund were aggressive on the front foot, etc. But I like if a team has range, also tactically, and if need be, can be defensive and have their defense win them games. And this was one of the examples. And like we said, Stuttgart are a very good team. They're a very well coached team, and they have punished us recently quite a lot. I think also when we think about how Dortmund defended against Leipzig, or in Leipzig rather, with Diomande just tearing them a new one. I think if you compare this performance versus the one on last Saturday, then there's also maybe a development. Maybe Stuttgart also don't have exactly the same individual players as Leipzig, that the tactical scheme might have not worked out for them as well as it did for Leipzig. But regardless, I just want to also point out that in my book, this is also a decent performance. Now, obviously, if Dortmund were to play like this every game, yeah, it'd be annoying, but they're not. So I don't know. I'm getting a little bit more relaxed about these kind of things too, especially since this one also really had that rep. The Champions League qualification. I don't think it was in great doubt anyway, but I think it's not 100% mathematically done yet, but with the way the fixtures go, I think a lot of crazy stuff would need to happen for it to even go out of Dortmund's hands, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah. And of course, first of all, praise to Karim Adeyemi for that really nice first touch that set him up to slot the goal away. And of course, the second goal was a really nice counterattack. Fabio Silva going shoulder to shoulder with the defender in one situation and not falling to the ground, but keeping on, and then seeing Adeyemi point to Brandt and playing a really nice cross. And yeah, Julian Brandt, obviously he is departing at the end of the season, but these are the kind of moments where I will miss him, because that was such a peach of a goal. And I don't think there are that many players in the Bundesliga that can score goals like that. So yeah, a beautiful shot, beautiful goal, and I hope we will see that repeated on Saturday against Leverkusen. Although, of course, Adeyemi, as you just pointed out to me pre-pod, will not be around as he is suspended on the 5th booking. So that will mean the players off the bench might be a different one. Lars, unless you have any final thoughts on the Stuttgart game, I would just move on to Leverkusen right now.
Go ahead.
Who are in the Rückrundentabelle in 6th place, but also still very much in the fight for the Champions League spots. They are currently in 6th place behind Hoffenheim with 49 points. Stuttgart, as we have mentioned, they are right now in the top 4 on 53 points. So this is still a very important game for Leverkusen, because either they want to position themselves in a better qualification spot for the Europa League and avoid maybe a playoff round here and there, or obviously, given their ambition and their most recent past, they won the championship not too long ago. I think finishing outside of the top 4 might be seen as a failure for them as well. I don't know exactly what the perception is at Leverkusen, since they did have a lot of turmoil. But yeah, that is certainly a team that wants to repeat what they did to us in the cup and win again. I think this is a game where both teams are on relatively level terms. Still think that Dortmund are a slightly better team than Leverkusen this season, as the table also would indicate. I mean, right now there is a 15-point gap between them, and die Tabelle lügt nicht, as we say. Table don't lie. Maybe a little bit here and there, but I think after 28 games, the picture is relatively clear. But still, Leverkusen, they just thrashed Wolfsburg 6-3 after Wolfsburg. I think they went 2-0 up or so in that game, if not 3-0. I don't exactly recall the details, but yeah, they certainly have a lot of offensive power. When we talk about the 60 goals that Dortmund scored, Leverkusen are not far behind with 58. And so, yeah, I think we might see more of a shootout this Saturday. Lars, what kind of game do you expect?
I find Leverkusen very hard to read this year, because, as you mentioned, they basically turned over their entire squad. Like, very few players of that championship-winning team are still around. Obviously, they also went from Xabi Alonso to Erik ten Hag to Kasper Hjulman in the space of, 4 Bundesliga games, if that's like a unit of time. So, and also looking at their results, it's kind of up and down. I think I remember them losing to Stuttgart at home to open the year, or maybe in the second year, a game of the year or something like that. They also had like a 3-3 draw against Freiburg a few weeks back, but then they also within a few days managed to draw both against Arsenal and FC Bayern, which are arguably two of the 3 or 4 or 5 best teams in Europe this season. So it's somewhat difficult to formulate expectations from Leverkusen, because they seem to fluctuate quite a bit. Remembering back to the 2 times these teams have already met this season, Dortmund were a bit lucky, I suppose, to win at Leverkusen in the league, but they took their chances and Leverkusen didn't, and it was another one of those performances where you could look at it from a positive perspective and say that Dortmund were the more mature clinical team, or you could be a bit negative about it and say that they let Leverkusen dominate the game on the ball a little bit. But here we are. Then I would say in the cup, Dortmund were actually much the better side and were very unlucky to be eliminated by a goal from Ivo Maza, but they didn't really create that glaring scoring opportunity. So it was a bit like what Stuttgart had on Saturday against Dortmund, a lot of dominance, but not really threatening in the final third. So given that Leverkusen are very much still in the hunt for a Champions League spot and need to hunt down Hoffenheim if they want to at least make the Europa League, you would expect them to be on it on Saturday. But then I kind of feel like Dortmund are in a bit of a flow situation right now, because obviously they don't really have anything to worry about, which sometimes means, players might lose focus a little bit or maybe half a step. But to me, it seems like a lot of the players are in pretty good nick these days. For example, Fabio Silva, I think Niko Kovac in the press conference on today, Thursday, he mentioned that in the last 2 or 3 weeks, he's seen like a noticeable uptick in performance from Fabio Silva in practice. And I think he once again against Stuttgart off the bench showed what he can bring to the table, for example. So that's just one player. A few others came back from the national teams with a spring in their step. For example, Kane Chukwuemeka, because he scored on debut for Austria. So I'm kind of looking forward to the game just because it's like there's no real jeopardy for Dortmund, even if they were to lose a home game against Leverkusen. Obviously, that would kind of destroy my argument that of only losing to Bayern for more than a year now. But it's not like second place would suddenly be in real peril. So from that point of view, it's kind of interesting to see them against another one of these good teams, which have given Dortmund problems over the last few years, and see how they stack up this time.
Yeah, me too. Also, another game without Felix Metscher, as he is injured with the, what is an MCL injury, I think. Lars, we haven't really discussed his injury in depth yet. We did talk a little bit about it though in the last episode. How did you like Chukwuemeka against Stuttgart, or that midfield trio consisting of Bellingham, Chukwuemeka, and Sabitzer, since that was the lineup that Kovac chose? Do you anticipate a change in that going forward? Maybe say a Julian Brandt instead of Sabitzer or so, or do you think this is sort of the midfield three that we're going to see for the remainder of the season? What's sort of your take on that midfield approach?
I was encouraged by Chukwuemeka's selection, just because I think Metscher's injury is basically the biggest chance Chukwuemeka has had so far at Dortmund, because they need someone to progress the ball, and he's basically the only one that really profiles to do that. Because obviously Julian Brandt is more of a final third player, or, a passer as opposed to a ball progressor, which Metscher does really well with his long strides, and Chukwuemeka at least has the blend of athletic ability and also technical ability to do it. But then I think he was very nondescript in his performance against Stuttgart. Obviously, him and Sabitzer kind of, interchanged in that role that usually Metscher plays. I think Sabitzer on the whole probably stayed more in his more attacking role that he's had over the last few games for Dortmund, which he also plays for Austria all the time, which is why it makes sense. I would like for Chukwuemeka to get a, prolonged run in that position, just because I think he's kind of been misused by Niko Kovac this season, because he's played him more in an attacking role, and I just don't think that that's really where Chukwuemeka's strength come to the table. But obviously, if you want to give Julian Brandt kind of a boon for deciding the game last week, and obviously he's very much among their top 13 or so players, so it's never a surprise if Brandt moves into the team, then I would suppose it would be the more traditional Bellingham, Sabitzer in the center, with Brandt on the 10 or, in one of those half space positions. Seeing as Brandt is leaving at the end of the year, and we kind of know how well that works or doesn't work, I'm still in the camp of trying to see what they have with Chukwuemeka, because obviously he's under contract for 4 more years after this season. So you will need to figure out eventually what you have in him. And he, as I mentioned before, with his switch to the Austrian FA, I'm pretty sure they guaranteed him basically a World Cup spot, but he will definitely need to show a little bit over the last few weeks to guarantee that performance-wise, and also if he wants to play a role for Austria, who have a very decent squad full of Bundesliga players, coincidentally. He will have to show something for Dortmund in the final few weeks of the season. So I would be inclined to keep pressing Chukwu and Necker just to see what I have, and go from there.
Yeah, I could not actually agree more with you, because Chukwuemeka, like you said, I think is also better suited in that somewhat deeper role, and also, I just want to see him play for 90 minutes at some point. I think you gotta do it before it becomes too much of a meme, honestly. But yeah, I think it's also a factor that got a little bit forgotten in the Stuttgart performance, that Felix Metscher has been one of Dortmund's best, if not the best player, and of course Dortmund will not be as good in possession if he's not on the field. And I think the adjustment for that will also take maybe a game or two. So yeah, that's just something that needs to be factored in the way that Dortmund did play away to Stuttgart, I think, because Felix Metscher has just been that good and that influential in midfield. And hopefully Chukwuemeka can make use of Leverkusen's way of playing, because I think Leverkusen will probably offer Dortmund a little bit more space also to play in behind Leverkusen's defense. And so my hope is that we will see a couple of Hollywood passes here and there from Chukwuemeka as well. You just said that he's more of a progressor, but I've seen a couple of passes here and there, not often, but I hope we'll see it a little bit more going forward. So yeah, it's, like you said, to me also very important that Chukwuemeka runs into form and hopefully stays healthy for the rest of the season, because like you said, Dortmund did pay a lot of money for him, and his, like you said, his contract runs until 2030. So yeah, Chukwuemeka definitely needs to start. I would also like to see the partnership of Silva and Bayer again up front. Guirassy is currently eyeing a move anyway. I think this is something that's a rumor that's been floating around. I think the more we get to the end of the season, the more we'll probably hear about that. I don't exactly know what Guirassy's future is, but right now my gut feeling is that he is probably trying to make one last move, as we've discussed previously. And Fabio Silva, also I think deserves a start again, and I think Leverkusen are also a team that suits that kind of lineup. So that's sort of how I'm thinking about it right now. But we can also just wait till Saturday. What is it? 2:30 p.m. local time. I think it's a 3:30 kickoff, right? This is not it is. So Lars, we can also talk about a couple of other subjects in the meantime, because Lars Ricken did finally have an interview with Sportbild this time. He did for certain say that Niko Kovac will be the coach next season. I've obviously talked about that subject a little bit at the end of the last episode, where I said I would not be surprised if Dortmund go in a different direction, but Lars Ricken said that 100% absolutely Niko Kovac is going to be the coach for next season. Lars, your thoughts on that, and maybe other tidbits from that interview that you may or may not have found interesting or remarkable?
I'm 100% in agreement with Lars Ricken that Niko Kovac should be Dortmund's head coach going into next season, because I think it would be preposterous after the job he's done to look for a different option yourself as Borussia Dortmund. Obviously, if Kovac came to them and said he wants to cash in and move to the Premier League because his standing is as high as it's ever going to be, then that's another discussion. But the job he's done, especially over the last 13 months or so since that defeat away to Leipzig last season, that has kind of been the turning point in his fortunes at Dortmund, has been nothing short of remarkable. And I mean, you can definitely argue that his playing style isn't necessarily what Borussia Dortmund usually want to stand for and whatever, and I get that. there's also something to be said for establishing something of a winning culture. And in those terms, it would be pretty hard to convince me, why a head coach with his resume over the last 13 months would have to go. So I think it makes perfect sense to see what he can do with, a refreshed squad, however that's looking in the summer, how he works with Ole Borg. Obviously, that is a budding partnership that is very hard to have any judgment on as of yet. But and then see how that goes. And I would definitely think that they are not going to extend Niko Kovac's contract as of right now, because obviously it's running until the end of next season. Usually you would probably not like to go into a lame duck situation with your head coach, but in this case it kind of makes sense just because there's been this change with Ole Borg coming over and presumably a change in a number of squad positions, and then you will have to see how that gels together. So if it turns out that Ole Borg's ideas and Niko Kovac's ideas aren't really compatible, then, you go separate ways at the end of next season, or if it goes to shit, maybe during the season. But again, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't go into next season with Niko Kovac and especially, the people who want them to be sacked and replaced by someone. I think that is an absolutely stupid idea. As for the rest of the interview, most of it I think is pretty standard stuff from Ricken, for example, talking about Jadon Sancho as one of the options. Like, of course, he's an option. We all know that, and he's available as a free agent, so they would be, negligent if they didn't at least think about how Jadon Sancho 3.0 might look at Borussia Dortmund. And he also talked about the rumors concerning Fisnik Asani of Hoffenheim, whom we've mentioned in previous episodes. And then this one rumor, I don't know where it came from, that Nick Woltemade might come on loan to Dortmund next season. And Ricken said that Dortmund are well set with Guirassy and Fabio Silva as their center forwards for next season. I think that's normal market posturing, because I'm in total agreement with you that it kind of seems like Serhou Guirassy, and there's some reporting on it as well, that Guirassy is kind of looking for a last big contract, trying to cash in on his scoring record for Stuttgart and Dortmund over the last few years. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if Guirassy left and then Aslani came over, because obviously Ole Borg knows him very well from Elversberg. He has a release clause that isn't prohibitive for a club like Dortmund, and he's proven himself already in the Bundesliga while still showing potential for growth. So I wouldn't necessarily put too much on Ricken's, posturing there.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, he did say that it's his wish and Ole Borg's wish and etc's wish that Guirassy will stay on, but like you said, I don't know, whatever. We can just move on, or rather end it here, Lars, unless you have any other comments to make, but I feel like for quick midweek episodes, this should suffice.
Agreed.
All right, in that case, everyone out there, as always, thank you very much for listening, and hopefully enjoy the game against Leverkusen, and we'll see you on the flip side. Goodbye.